No school Friday and Monday. We all enjoy the weekend. Lunch in the main line, spaghetti, spicy chicken, hot ham and cheese.
I want to give you every minute possible for your quiz. Get going.
Most of those until Tuesday. PreCalc meeting today. Engage room. Everyone's welcome. The topic will be Easter. Trials for the 2022 Spartan Dance Team. Held Wednesday, April 27th, after school. Trials are open to all 8th to 11th graders. Potential dancers need to attend one learning session either on Sunday, April 24th or Monday, April 25th, 3:30 to 5. Please see or email Coach Jeff for more information about trials and the dance team in general. Next week is musical week, Beauty and the Beast. Keep in mind before the Thursday performance on April 28th and 6th. From 5 o'clock, we will have the Fab Scissor Social on April 21st, 6 to 7, Tuesday Commons. Prior to the musical Beauty and the Beast, all that money raised helps fine art activities and the Fine Arts Boosters. Also, the Fine Arts Boosters Club hosting the annual Fine Arts Gala on Thursday, April 28th, 6:30 to 8:30 in the high school gym. The honored Fine Arts students in high school and middle school awards, food, and entertainment. Honored Fine Arts students will receive an invitation in the mail. Pick up your free ticket in the office and buy additional tickets for your family. Adult tickets and other students are $5 a day. Again, support staff. Game Club, quarter 4, Geekathon, Friday, 10:30 to 5 in the library. All students are welcome for consoles, Smash Tournament, Magic Draft, D&D, and more. Lunch is free, but a $5 donation is appreciated. Keep in mind today, Thursday, last day of the fourth quarter midterm. All grades will be posted next week. Please plan accordingly with any teachers. Today is the end of the fourth quarter midterm. National Honor Society meets April 27th during lunch in Mrs. Leichenberg's room. All members are required to attend. You can sign up for the Athletic Booster Club Scholarship. We still have those. Juniors, check the announcements hanging around the school. You have state testing next week on the 20th and 21st. Make sure your computer's charged up that day and both those days. Stay in the Commons when the bells ring at 8:15. We will serve you breakfast each one of those mornings, and we'll have snacks throughout your testing. Testing schedule and what room you go to, 105, is posted in numerous locations around the school. Please make sure you check that out. All, please stand for the pledge. Please shoot the flag. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All have a great day. Great 4-day break.
Should be good. Is anyone still rolling? Man. Come on, Frank. Come on, Frank. Stage 1. Go find all your stuff. The vertical shift, 0. Amplitude, 1. You didn't have to write all this. I'm just finding all of it. Period. 2 pi over b in this case, pi, which means my quarter marks are going to be at pi over 4 increments. The green. Phase shift. Negative c, so negative 3 pi, over b is 2, is 3 pi over 2. So, if I have a 3 pi over 2 as a phase shift, most of us are going to shove that in the middle. Most of us are going to do our quarter marks from there. Because it's 3 pi over 2 and going by pi over 4 increments, it will go back and hit 0. So if you did that, cool. Not necessary. 3 pi over 2 is actually 6 pi over 4, so add a pi over 4 is 7 pi over 4, 8 pi over 4, 9 pi over 4, 10 pi over 4, or 5 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, pi over 2, and on and on and on and on. But you see how it's going by quarters, so we'll go back and hit 0. Did anyone use that fact to start their graph with 0? Okay. And my vertical shift and amplitude being 0, 1 respectively means I'll just put my 0, 1, negative 1 there. And because it's secant, and secant is reciprocal of cosine, I will start at a maximum. Poke. And I do that old pattern we've been doing for about a week and a half now. Middle down, middle up. Middle down, middle up. But this time, it all blows outwards, and now it says x-intercepts are asymptotes. Maximums become minimums. Minimums become maximums. Cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria. Okay, so much like all of our other graphs, did you have your period and phase shift correct? Because if you don't have those correct, naturally that whole axis is just trash. Then, did you actually put them in the correct spots? Were you using the quarter marks, or did you just accidentally use the period over and over? Did you reduce all your fractions? That kind of stuff. Is your vertical axis labeled correctly? Were your dots in the correct spot, meaning you used an actual cosine function? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then did you put all the asymptotes and use in the right spots? Did you actually use the secant instead of a regular cosine? Okay, so basically 2 for the graph, 2 for the axes, 1 for finding the correct stuff, which is how they'll basically be graded for a quiz. Anything about it? Okay. We had 2 days with which to get some work done and ask questions. Speak now or forever hold your pieces. On
32.
32. Womp. Come on, you. No! There we go. Okay, 32. What about it? Just graph it?
Yeah, I think I messed up my phase shift.
Okay. Period 2 pi over b, which means my quarter marks, 1/4 times that is going to be pi over 6. Phase shift, negative c over b. Remember, when I divide by 3, I multiply by a third. So that means I have a phase shift, a negative pi over 18. That was it? Okay. A really small trick to help with that.
I just saw pi over 18 and I was like, okay, I don't know if I did that right.
Yep.
Nice.
We're good from there?
Yeah.
Are we all good with I don't want to fraction or I don't trust myself fractioning? I can do the calculator thing. Okay. The calculator trick without pi's is going to be your phase shift plus your quarter marks or your half marks for tangent. Halves. I can English. X. Okay, so in this case, if I wanted to have the entirety of that horizontal axis, I would put in there negative 1/18 plus 1/6 x. Why don't I put the pi's there? Calculator ain't going to do pi for you. It's just going to give you a bunch of decimals. So if you just omit the pi's as you put this in, you're going to get all the fraction parts, and then you just write them with pi. Mm-hmm.
Is there a fraction button? Because if you don't put in fractions, it puts it in decimal.
Under mode, there's answers will be set to auto or decimal. If you type it as a fraction, you get the fraction. If you type it as a division problem, it puts it as a decimal no matter what. So if you have the alpha y equals shortcut to do a fraction, use that as your input. And on some of the older TIs, even when you hit the fraction button, it'll still write it like this. Even if, like, it depends on the 84s. 84 was the transition period between we don't have the alpha shortcuts at all to we've figured out how to make alpha shortcuts. If you have the alpha y equals shortcut to do box over box, sometimes it'll still write it as just fraction mode, but because you typed it with box over box, even though it didn't display it as box over box, it should still put fractions in the table for you. Yo.
Most of the newer TI-84s have alpha x, just provides a fraction instead of having to go alpha y counter. I got one fantastic.
Alpha x?
Well, it doesn't for my calculator, which is newish.
Huh.
So if you're lucky enough to have your own, and it's decently new.
Then it's just one less button, right? Others from the homework?
On our test, you know, it's like, is it just a random, so they could be really bad fractions, or they could be very...
They could be nasty, they could be nice. They won't be puke-tastic.
Okay, so if we keep it, is that okay? Like the whole
Well, can't you just go old school? Can I just 1/6 plus Let's say it was like 5 pi over 8 plus 5 over 8 plus 5 over 8 plus 5 over 8. You could always do that. That's how we did it back in the day. So you can always just manually add them. I'm just saying this is faster because it'll give you the table. Okay. I'm just trying to think here. So next week, if I remember right, our second semester classes are kind of split like 60-40, sophomore, junior. How many juniors we got in here? Oh, well, heavy on the juniors first hour then. So Wednesday, Thursday is smarter balance testing. Couple things about that. A, it does not affect you in any way, shape, or form other than if the class collectively does well enough, then the entire class collectively will not have to report to Spartan time regardless. Like, you won't have to do the 205 thing. If you're stuck in Spartan time because you have bad grades, so you should probably be in Spartan time. That's one thing. But right now it's the whole 205 thing. Or it was. This year they let juniors go earlier. I don't know why. What it's always been traditionally is if the class collectively gets good enough on the smarter balance, I think they just gave y'all a pass this year because, the world ended. If you collectively get a high enough score as a class, then they say you just don't have to report at all except for if you got a D or an F or an advisory day. Yes, the entire junior class. Meaning you don't have to show up for that annoying 20 minutes. Okay, I think this year they kind of let the juniors off the hook because last year there was no reason to do any data. Speaking of that is the second part. There's wording here. The school is required by law to administer the Smarter Balance test, the state test, to all students. You are not individually required to take it, so your parents can opt you out. And our office staff have been falsely telling kids, no, you can't. You are allowed to opt out. The school is required to administer. You are not required to participate. There's a difference. Okay? So, I personally hate all standardized testing. But there's pros and cons to it. Kind of, if you have to play the game, right? That's why we do the ACT stuff. I hate the ACT. I still show kids how to do it, and I still want you to be prepared for it, right? So I'm just giving you information. You decide to do with it whatever you want to do with it.
Yeah, this person had me, was going to have me go back on, I think, next week, the week after next, Thursday and Friday to do Smarter Balance, and I would have missed 2 classes, but I think I'm pushing off.
The parents have to call and opt you out. The school will, some of the people in the school will try to tell you otherwise. So, review. Find the exact value of each trig function. There's 3 of them. You get the choice. You can either draw the reference triangle, use your special right triangle ratios, or look it up on the unit circle. I don't care which you do. Okay? I could say a negative 2 pi over 3 looky like this with a reference angle of pi over 3 meaning square root of 3, 1, 2, negative, negative, because I'm in that quadrant. And then I would say the secant is, instead of adjacent over hypotenuse, it's hypotenuse over adjacent. 1 over 2 over negative 1. Or could you go back on the unit circle, 2 pi over 3, see the angle, look at the cosine coordinate, and flip it? Okay? Well, because it's secant instead of cosine, reciprocal. So your choice, either way, sine of 1/2, or sorry, 1/2, sine of pi over 2. Again, I can just go here and look at the y coordinate. Or I can try to make a triangle, and it turns out I can't make a triangle because it's 0, 1, or even your old x, y, r shortcuts. Remember, x, y, r, and then I would say sine of theta is y over r. Well, what happens when it's r over r? So you can look at the circle, you can try to make the triangle, you can use your coordinate shortcuts. Whatever way you're doing, sine of pi over 2 is just 1. Hi.
How do you know which one to use on the unit circle? Like, is it just cosine for all of those, or is
Because all the coordinates are cosine sine?
Yeah. Is it just
Because that's reciprocal of cosine, I use the cosine part of the coordinate.
Oh, okay.
I feel like I'm not picking up what you're putting down.
I'm lost. So
So, first find angle. Negative 2 pi over 3. 1/3 pi, 2/3 pi, there.
no, I get that. It's like, how do you know which part to use for each problem? Like is sin gonna be cosine as well?
All the coordinates are cosine sine, like x, y. So if they're asking for secant, secant is reciprocal of cosine, use this part of the coordinate. If they said find the cosecant of negative 2 pi over 3, that's reciprocal of sine. Use the sine part of the coordinate. It all depends which one they're asking for. That's why next to our unit circle, every single one of them, we wrote cosine sine, and then our tangent value on the outside. 5 pi over 4, what quadrant are we in? Okay. So I go down into this quadrant. I can either say tangent is y over x, but I'm guessing most of us don't want to do square root of 2 over 2 over square root of 2 over 2 and try to rationalize it, but anything over itself is 1. How many of us have our tangent values written next to on the unit circle? Okay, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel like that. Option 2 is draw your reference triangle, 1, 1, square root of 2, negative, negative, and then tangent is opposite over adjacent. Okay, so you've got all of the ways. I don't care what you do. Answer. Which is why there's 3 of them there. Yeah.
We don't have to show.
I would recommend at a bare minimum just a quick sketch of where the angle is, or maybe write quadrant 1, quadrant 3. Okay, like anything else that you could do in your head or the calculator, you run the risk, right? You do the thing. I know you could have just looked it up. I know you could have done it by mental math if you actually know your circle. If you're right, you're right. Cool. But if you're wrong and you got nothing else with it, now you don't get even the partial points. Get what I'm saying? Okay. It's like the whole, do I have to check my answer? No. But if you're wrong and you had the ability to make sure you were right, all right? Okay. Graph at least 2 periods of the function, labeling your axes appropriately. Step 1, make axes. Step 2, go find all your stuff. It doesn't say find the stuff, state the stuff. It just says graph it labeling appropriately. That means you should be labeling it using that information. So maybe off to the side, I will write said stuff. I have a vertical shift of 1. That's horizontal. I have a amplitude of 1/5. So 1 above that is 6/5. 1 below that is 4/5. I have a phase shift of negative c over b. Remember that b is 1/3, not 3. Multiply by reciprocal, getting a phase shift of negative 9 pi over 2. Period. Is it 2 pi over b or pi over b?
It's 2 pi over b.
Remember, pi over b is only for tangent and cotangent. 2 pi over b, b is 1/3, so I get a period of 6 pi. So my quarter marks are 3 pi over 2, which actually happens to line up nicely. Negative 9 pi over 2 plus 3 pi over 2 is negative 6 pi over 2, or negative 3 pi. Is negative 3 pi over 2. Is 0. Is 3 pi over 2. Is negative 12 pi over 2. Is negative 15 pi over 2. Is negative 18 pi over 2. Is negative 21 pi over 2. You notice on every one of these, if I can reduce it, I'm reducing it. How many of you have gotten that test back and it's got that little asterisk next to it with an R? Reduce. Always reduce if you can. And then it's cosine graph. It's a cosine graph that's negative. Ooh, sneaky, sneaky. Where am I starting? At a minimum. And then middle up, middle down. Middle up, middle down. Again, I am checking. Is your phase shift and your spacing on the period correct? So basically, I'm looking over here to see you got the stuff right. Step 2, did you label your horizontal axis correctly? Step 3, did you label your vertical axis correctly? Step 4, did you start in the right spot? Step 5, did you make the kind of graph that they wanted you to? Okay. Whether you label inside or outside the graph, I noticed normally I put them inside the graph, but as the chapter has gone on more and more, I keep writing it outside of the graph because it's easier for you to see. I don't care where you put them so long as they're labeled and I can read it. I'll tell you number 2, I've got a bunch of different forms of the test. It's going to be sine or cosine. What's the difference? Where it starts, midline or maximum. Okay. Number 3 will be tangent or cotangent. I don't remember. Okay. So start with your axes. Womp. Womp. Go and find your stuff. I have a vertical shift of 0. We have a amplitude of 1. So I put 1 and -1 here. We have a phase shift is still the same, -c over b. Negative negative is positive. Multiply by the reciprocal of 4 and get 2 pi. Period. Careful. 1 pi over b. Tangent and cotangent are 1 pi over b. Half marks, not quarter marks. So my half marks are just pi, or sorry, 2 pi. Which means if I got a phase shift and my box markings are going to line up somehow, I could have started back at 0. I will not require you to. Okay. Don't be this kid. I had a kid do it before. Oh, that is clever, but don't do that. Okay? That is clever, but don't do that.
Yeah, technically it's not wrong.
Yeah, that's so much.
That's like I would take the time to draw a little guy down there going. Don't do that. Oh wait, we're not done. Tangent starts at a asymptote or x-intercept. So cotangent starts at a what? Asymptote. So I will have asymptotes at 2 pi, 6 pi, at 10 pi, -2 pi, -6 pi. It is a cotangent graph, so I will go north to south instead, making sure that in between the asymptote and the x-intercept, you are at that 1 mark. You're at that -1 mark. Up, middle, down. Up, middle, down. Up, middle, down. I feel like I shouldn't have shown you that right before the test. Don't do that. Okay. Because a scalar multiplier for an axis is easier. Don't do it because I don't know if Spear's going to get mad at me if you start doing that in his class because you developed a bad habit in here. Okay? There you go.
First test, that is what I'm doing.
Yeah, don't do that. So again, 3 will be tangent or cotangent. 4 will be cosecant or secant. Go and find all your stuff. Vertical shift is -1. Your amplitude is 2/5. So up 2/5 from there is -3/5. Down 2/5 from there is -7/5. Go find the phase shift. Phase shift is -c over b. negative 2 pi. If you need to put that 6 over 1, oh wait, never mind. Shh. Should have been faster. Negative pi over 18. Hey, look at that. That over 1 helps. As soon as I put it there, I caught my mistake. Period. 2 pi over b. B is currently 6. How is who 1? What? I heard of something. How is 1? No? Okay. If I'm at negative pi over 18 and I'm adding increments of quarter marks, pi over 12, ew. What is the least common multiple between 18 and 12? 36. So I have negative 2 36 and 3 36. Is 1 36? Is 4 36? Or pi over 9? Is 7 pi over 36? Is 10 pi over 36 and reduced? Is negative 5 pi over 36? Is negative 8 pi over 36? Or negative 2 pi over 9? Is negative 11 pi over 36? Is negative 14 pi over 36? And reduced along the way. Again, if you need to use your calculator to get through that part, do it. Then, cosecant is the reciprocal of who? Sine. And sine normally starts at a midline. There's no negative, so I go up, middle, down, middle. Down, middle, up, middle. But instead of connecting those as my sine wave, it was Old Man Withers all along. You turn all of those x-intercepts into asymptotes. And you turn all of your maximums into minimums and minimums into maximums. Get a bunch of use. Forget about who what? Oh.
Where are like where the intercept is, where the asymptote is? If you can't really see it, but if like we do all the other asymptotes like that, because it's like darker.
Yeah, if I can't see it, I squint. If there's something there, I know that you got it there. Okay. All right. Okay, from the table, remember when we make something from a table, it's going to be A times the cosine of bx plus c plus d. Each of those parts, my midline is maximum plus or minus minimum. If I'm trying to find the midline, like a midpoint, plus minimum over 2. So in this case, maximum plus minimum, where is maximum? 77 and 32, right? So 109 over 2, I can leave it as 109 over 2. Or I can say 54.5 because it happens to be a terminating decimal. The amplitude, You're taking that distance and cutting it in half, and distance is found by subtraction. And you're going to have the maximum minus the minimum over 2. So now it's 77 minus 32 divided by 2, so 45 halves. All right, now the tougher part. How do I get B? Do we remember? The context of the problem. We know that period is 2 pi over B. Period is how long it takes to complete a cycle. You have to look at the problem and determine average monthly temperatures. Okay, how long does it take to go from maximum temperature to maximum temperature? A year or 12 months. Why do I say 12 months instead of 1 year? Table is in months. So I put a 12 right here, cross multiply solve, and get pi over 6 for a B value. Phase shift. Kind of squished up there, running out of room. Phase shift is negative C over B. We just found out that B was pi over 6. How do I find my phase shift? Because I'm using the cosine function, if x equals 1 is January, then x equals 7 is July. My maximum did not occur at 0, it occurred at 7. So it got shoved 7 to the right. My phase shift is 7. Cross multiply and solve, negative 7 pi over 6. Now, it doesn't ask you to use a model to do thing. I'm really just looking at, can you find those 4 things? Okay, it's like 4 mini games, and then did you write the final equation? Hey, that would be a good thing to write. Don't just find these 4 things individually and then move on. Actually write the equation. Kind of like how many of us would find the slope. We would plug slope x and y into y equals mx plus b. We'd go find b, and then we just move on. You have to take the slope and the y-intercept and put them together to actually make the equation. Been berating my freshmen for that for like 2 months. And finally, a little bit of review town. Oh no. I solve radical equations by undoing radical with its reciprocal power. So I will undo square root with squared. I would really recommend not squaring it right now because we have 2 radicals on the same side of the equation. Step 1, I would actually rewrite this as square root of x plus 9 is square root of x plus 1. Then I undo square root with squared. But remember, when you square both sides, as I was going through someone's old test, someone made up a test from yesteryear, and I was going through old ones, and do not square like a freshman. If you need to write out square root of x plus 1 times square root of x plus 1 and FOIL first, outer, inner, last, do not square like a freshman. This is x plus 2 root of x plus 1. The trick for it is square this term, square that term, multiply, and double. for your middle term. And then, well, I still have a radical. I still need to square. Okay. Now, oddly enough, when I subtract the x's, they just go away. Subtract 1 from both sides. I'm there. That might not happen. What if I have 2x minus 8 over there? When I square it again, don't square like a freshman. Okay? But regardless, you're going to square again because you still have a radical. Square this, square this. Would anyone care to divide that into 4 and square root of x first? If you can make your life easier, make your life easier. And you get 16 is x. Or is it plus or minus?
No, plus or minus are only for radicals.
When I put a square root, I did not put a square root, I squared. Make sure that it actually works, because if I plug in a 16, 16 plus 9 is 25. Square root of 25 is? Put in 16. Square root of 16 is? 5 minus 4 is indeed 1. It works. It might not. Y'all got 43 minutes for 6 problems that I timed out at 4 minutes, 19 seconds, so you should be under a half hour. Okay? I always do it times 6. For some reason this semester it's like times 8. Y'all gonna be good, okay? You got 43 minutes. You have more than enough time. Devices over there. Scramble yourselves up. You know the drill.